everyone. Welcome to boot camp. We'll be starting in 5. Scooch closer if you like, because there's lots of room, but just hang tight for 5 minutes and we'll begin.
This is just a sound test to make sure that things are actually going to be coming through the live stream. When Madeline came in and announced something before, it was a little bit quiet. I couldn't hear. So now I'm trying to be a little bit louder and just see if it comes through. There's about a 10-second delay. So by the time I get out to the lobby, I should know if this works.
Good afternoon. Hi, thank you so much for coming in the middle of a rainstorm to to the Ted Rogers Bloor Cinema. I'm Elizabeth Bradshaw. I'm the Director of Industry Programming. We are very grateful to welcome you all here today. Also, we are very happy to reach out to our live streaming audience who is probably watching us around the world or maybe just down the street. So all this will be captured online. For the audience who are watching live, you can tweet us at Hot Docs Industry if you've got questions, and we'll take them here. And as well, for those of you who wanted to, have friends come out or couldn't make it, you can send them the link, and they can watch this another time. It'll be captured on the internet forever. Thanks so much for coming out to this boot camp. We've been doing this for the past few years to try to give people a better understanding of what it is to attend the Hot Docs Industry events. There's tons of information online, but it can be a little daunting, a little overwhelming. We thought, what better way than to have access to the industry team here, and as well as some of our programmers and some folks who have been through so many of our events, and hear from them directly. So we're going to do a presentation today to kind of hopefully address a lot of your questions, and then there'll be a nice kind of question and presentation from one of our programmers, and then a little bit of a deeper Q&A. If you have questions, how do I do it? Take them throughout or save them to the end? We can do a little bit both. If you have a pertinent question, raise your hand. We're an intimate group here. We can answer them right away or save them to the end. And then I'll be checking to see if there's any kind of key questions that come in from Twitter that maybe is something that's burning in your heart. So I'm going to get things started off, and then we're going to do this kind of karaoke styles and just pass the mic down through the team so you get to meet us and hear from all of us. How many of you in our audience here have attended Hot Docs Industry Side in the past? Solid handful of people, okay. And how many of you attended just as audience members? Interesting, okay, pretty much, that's good to see. And of course, and how many of you had a film selected in the festival? Just a few, but hopefully soon all of you will, one day. Well, what we really want to talk about today is really what Hot Docs Industry events can do for you at the stage of the career that you're at. At its core, what's really special is that there's about over 2,000 industry attendees that come from around the world. And that's pretty exceptional access, pretty much into your backyard. To be able to meet different broadcasters, distributors, sales agents, as well as film funds and different, documentary industry experts, but also other filmmakers, producers, composers, editors, directors, everything under the sun. So that is a really exciting and critical point, and those numbers are important to feel access to. We have over 300 decision makers that come from around the world, and when we talk about decision makers, we mean folks who can help fund your film, like broadcasters, distributors who can help sell your film, and also other film funds that can help support you along the way. This is the 23rd year of the festival, which is very exciting. And so what are the things that really can happen here for you? We mentioned a lot about the people who are in attendance, so it's a lot about networking, getting to meet other folks and growing your circle, your creative circle, to help you complete your film. It's about building partnerships beyond just what's here in Toronto and internationally. And a lot of it is about marketing you as a filmmaker as much as your project and the work that you're doing. So whether you're here to seek funding, to release a film, or to continue your story development, there's a lot of different programs that are really catered and tailored to your needs. And that's essentially what we're going to hear about today. On to the important part. I like we get right to the beginning. How much does it cost? All of this for a real bargain. So right now, we've sold out of our first 50 passes, but next year, I know all of you will jump on the internet quickly because really it's our best bargain. The first 50 passes are at a super great price, so mark your calendars and keep your eyes on the net for when we go on sale. But after that, we're really hitting our early bird prices that go until February 28th. So that's just a few days away to be able to access those deals. I'm going to quickly go through the pass types, right? So there's a Kickstart pass, conference networking, and all access. So Kickstart is a one-day event that happens at the conference of the industry events. It's really for a great emerging first-time early filmmaker. It gives you access to a handful of conference sessions. There's no networking attached, but it's really if you want to come and have a one-day taster and really understand what the conference and the market events are available for you. And it's pretty accessible. The conference pass gives you access to the entire week of conference and workshops events that happen over at Vic College and our industry center there. And you're able to go to as many as you like that happen throughout the week from the Monday to Friday of the festival. Essentially, the next pass up gives you the happy hours and other networking elements that come. So every day from 5 to 7, there's a fantastic networking event that happens. It's the Hot Docs Happy Hours. It is really a great place to do that networking, to meet with people, and to talk about what you've seen and learned throughout the day. And finally is the All Access Pass. This is the golden ticket to the Hot Docs industry events. This gives you access to everything that you've heard of before, as well as our Hot Docs Forum, which you'll hear about in a little bit. It's essentially our Dragon's Den of international film finance, a 2-day event that happens at Hart House on the Tuesday and Wednesday of the festival, May 2nd and 3rd. Yeah, it moves each year. And that event is the highly sought after ticket. These sell out really quickly, so the fact that there's still some left is pretty great. And that pass price is a little high, but for the value that you get in terms of access to these pitches, these buyers, the close-ups, and all the different activities, in addition to all the other industry aspects, is pretty fantastic. With these passes, of course, you get access to films. So there is an incredible amount of value in these different pass levels. And if you've got questions about like, well, what's good for me? This is what I'm interested in. Today, you're going to find out which one should work for you. So without further ado, I'll pass this on to Madeline Rousseau. Or Neil, just kidding. Neil McPherson, who's our industry programmer for distribution.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk about a few things with you, a few slides. First of all, I'm going to talk about Distribution Rendezvous. Distribution Rendezvous is going to take place on Monday, the 1st of May. It takes place across 2 sessions, one in the morning, one afternoon. And what it is, it's an opportunity for producers to meet up with buyers, and saying buyers in the kind of general sense, so distributors, broadcasters, sales agents. So these are 15-minute kind of speed dating style meetings. Last year we had, over the course of the day, 50 buyers taking part in 405 different meetings. So it's a really busy, really kind of full-on, energized period of time for both the filmmakers and the buyers there. To attend as a producer, as a filmmaker, you need to have, I'll go closer, okay. DocHot's Conference and Networking Pass, or the All Access Pass. And once you have those passes and you're registered, you can then apply to participate in Distribution Rendezvous via the Hot Docs community page website. Some things to consider, I suppose, if you are planning on attending these sessions. One thing to think about is planning ahead. So give yourself some time to do some research into the buyers that are present. The buyers would be listed after you've submitted your projects. The way it works is, as filmmakers, you have the list of the buyers, and after doing some research and finding out which buyers you think your project would work best for, and which project, whether it's a sales agent whose catalog, whose films within their catalog you think your film best suits. So you do some research, and then you can decide which buyers you'd like to meet with. The buyers in turn would get your projects and then decide whether to accept or not accept your meetings on the day. What else can I mention about Distribution Rendezvous? I think that kind of covers it in a general sense. I mean, obviously I'm going to be around afterwards and you can ask me specific questions. So I'm going to jump to the next slide, and we're talking about the Doc Shop. The Doc Shop is a resource for, again, international buyers who attend the festivals, for festival programmers, or for people who are just interested in accessing the content at the festival is screening and may not be able to see it within the theatre. So as a registered delegate, you can access the Doc Shop, which is a series of 40 different viewing stations, and there will be roughly 500 films available for delegates to view in that space, primarily films that are playing in the festival, but also films from the international delegations who participate in the festival, and also a selection of other films which our programming team feels would be of interest to international buyers. And next slide is the online community. So the online community, I mean, Liz talked a little bit about the opportunity for networking within the festival. The online community provides you with the opportunity to network prior to the festival in that kind of virtual environment. And it also provides you with a fantastic opportunity to see who's attending the festival, whether it be the filmmakers or producers you like to meet with, or buyers. But you can look and you'll see all the hundreds of buyers who are present, and do some research again into who those people are, and schedule some meetings during the festival. That's kind of me, I believe. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Madeline. I'm an industry programmer for Dealmaker. I'm going to talk a little bit about the forum, and I know a lot of you know the forum because it is our flagship pitching event. If you're looking for financing, if you're looking for co-production, it's kind of our most competitive pitching event that we have at the festival, most public in the sense that you're pitching to a room full of 300 decision makers that have been invited to the festival. So the forum has about 178 this year applications that were sent. We usually get almost 200. We select 19 projects, and the 19 projects go through vigorous training prior to the festival. About 2 months of pitching training with our forum producer, Dorota Lech, as well as pitch training during the forum. There's also, so during the festival, there's 15 minutes in which you pitch, and then 15 minutes total where you pitch. So 7 minutes where you are, 7 minutes where you pitch, and then 7 minutes where you get feedback from the table.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. And so at the pitching forum, these 19 projects present, and they get guided feedback from a table of 40 broadcasters. And what's interesting about this is that you can attend as an observer. And in that, there's great opportunities. You get to learn and see what different feedback comes from broadcasters from around the world. Additionally, it's a great way to understand how projects are presenting their work these days. What's also important about the forum is that there is the Mounties hat draw. So if you attend as an observer, you're able to put your business card if you have a project to pitch, and you may be selected to present the next day at the forum. So if you're feeling lucky, that's a nice way to create an opportunity for yourself to present your work in front of audiences. I will mention this, as Canadian filmmakers, there's a $10,000 pitch prize that's supported by Chorus Media. And this also is eligible for the Mountie hat pitch as long as you're Canadian. So there's real cash on the table, which is very exciting to take away from this project. At the forum, yes, you do need an all-access pass to attend. And a lot of people will make this point, it's pretty expensive, right? Like, this is a big investment for me as an independent filmmaker here in Toronto. And when do I know that I'm ready to attend and ready to, make the investment of this type of learning? This is a really good question. I would encourage you to really think about, one, what are you looking to learn out of this space? And do you have a project that you're pitching? Not necessarily at the forum, but something that you have that you can connect and meet different buyers with. So if you want to come and observe, it's a really good opportunity to do that type of learning. But if also you're willing to observe, and you have a project that's in production or something that's in development that you want to talk to people about and cultivate your network, then I think it's a really good time to make the investment to come. So something to think about. What happens over the 2 days, on the Tuesday and Wednesday of the forum, are the pitches happen in the morning. There's a amazing networking lunch that happens at Hart House, and fingers crossed there'll be good weather and we'll be out in the garden. But in the afternoon is the deal maker. I'm gonna do that. Perfect. So deal maker is the one-to-one prearranged business meetings that happen that are separate from the forum. So you can apply separately with these. Take your project, you put your submission in, everything is online. You do need an all access pass to access this event. And if you are selected, we take on another 50 projects in addition to the forum ones. We pre-arrange meetings with buyers that you'll likely have, a handful, maybe between 5 and 10 meetings that have been pre-selected. You selected the buyer and the buyer selected you. And that's really critical because you don't want to go in cold to a meeting where the buyer's like, yeah, this could be interesting, or you don't know if you're the right fit. We make sure that those fits happen. So these meetings happen in the afternoons after the forum and in the same location at Hart House. So another point of access for you to get your project in front of buyers and see about finding different ways to finance your films. Now, you may have some free time between your Dealmaker meetings, or if you're an observer and you didn't participate in Dealmaker, you're just there to observe the forum, you're like, what am I going to do in the afternoon? We have a series of close-ups with, and these are small, intimate gatherings with key buyers. And we produce about, let's say 10 of them, maybe 12?
No, 16.
Oh.
16.
Thank you. We produce 16 of these, and they happen in the afternoons. So if you've got time between your Dealmaker meetings or you're not participating in those, you can pop over and you sign in. There'll be 20 of you in a room with some of these buyers. So maybe it's someone from NHK in Japan or POV in the States, BBC, different major buyers that can really help to, you can get access to. And there's a moderator in that place, and a candid, quick conversation happens where you really get a sense of what these buyers are looking for, and they get to meet and connect with everyone in the room. So it's a pretty incredible access point that often is not highlighted in the all access pass, but something that the people who take advantage of really, really enjoy.
So the next slide is once you have those meetings. And if anyone does have a project, 'cause I don't think Liz mentioned it, if they do have a project that they're interested in submitting this year, though the forum deadline is passed, we are still accepting applications for Dealmaker. And so those applications are open until March 2nd, and you have to be registered with an all access pass to submit a project to Dealmaker. So that's really important. That's part of why we have boot camp now, so that you've got lots of time to register for the festival and submit those applications before the deadline on March 2nd. So that's something important to know. But here's some tips for really how do you make your application as strong as possible. So these are some questions that you really want to answer when you're putting together these applications. And this is really useful for any kind of application that you're putting out there for your film. So you want to talk about what are you going to see on screen for 90 minutes? So what's actually going to happen? What's going to progress? What images are we going to see as a viewer? What journey are we going to go on? You want to articulate the international, universal, and human appeal of the story. Something that often happens for Canadians is that we get told that a story is too Canadian. And you really need to be able to show the international buyers how this story transcends being a Canadian story and is an international story. But beyond that, you also need to find what is unique about this story. What makes this story different than the same story that's happening in Turkey or the same story that's happening in South Africa that really makes this the story, the one that needs to be told out in the world. How to differentiate your, oh, that's the one I just did, the value, making it different from the other ones. You want to be fluent with the international broadcaster and buyer community needs. So that's really just about understanding what the market actually is. Where can your documentary live? So something that's really important to think about is, what other documentaries maybe is your documentary like? What kinds of films or stories that have been successful and been out there can it be compared to? So not necessarily that it's the same story, but that it lives in the same space. And so you want to have an idea of, what kind of films are successful? Where do they live? Do they live on broadcast television? Do they live online? Who are the buyers that are picking them up and screening them? And what does that audience look like for those films? And then finally, just to have those expectations that are adjusted to that and adjusted to the shifting viewership. And the fact that we're finding money and documentaries in different places than we did before, and really starting to understand that. Madeline, do you have anything to add there?
No, I'll move on to close-ups though, which I
Okay.
believe Liz might have touched on very briefly. Sorry, I ran away. I've been feeling unwell. So the close-up sessions, I'm back, guys. The close-up sessions are 30-minute info sessions that happened in and amongst Dealmaker after the forum. So if you are in Dealmaker, please don't sign up for sessions during those meetings because you may have meetings at that time. But they're an opportunity for you to meet broadcasters who are at the festival who are doing an info session. They're not necessarily taking pitches, they're not listening to your specific project, but they will give information about the remit, their remit and the projects that they're looking for this year. So this year we have POV, NHK, the New York Times, Discovery, Al Jazeera, Fork Films, and Hartley as funding agents. And there's no need to pre-register for those during the festival or prior to the festival, but on the morning of each session, you register at Hard House. So you can wake up early, sign up for those, get in line, they're quite popular. And that's a great opportunity to meet those broadcasters maybe for the first time.
Hello. My name is Heidi Chow Yang. I'm the Industry Funds Manager at Hot Docs, and I'm going to talk to you about our conference. So our conference is usually held from Monday to Friday of the week. So this year is May 1st to May 5th. And Elizabeth mentioned earlier with the different types of passes, if you remember, the conference pass, conference and networking, and all access. So if you don't necessarily have, if you don't have a project that you're there to pitch, maybe you're not in a particular program and you just want to really learn, and this is like your way in, you just want to get to know people in the international community, come to our conference. So what our conference consists of a few different things. One is our master classes. So last year we had Ika Vekilati, who is the former commissioning editor of YLE. We also have panels, we have workshops. Actually, workshops I'll tell you in a second, but panels and interviews. So last year we had a panel on VRs, for instance. We put VR on trial. We had a session on online platforms, what they're currently looking for, and what works online. We also had interviews with Heidi Ewing and, I'm going to pronounce this maybe incorrectly, Joe Berlinger. Thank you. Pronounced it correctly. We also have this session called I Pitch Now What, which means we've invited some people who have pitched in our sessions before and invited them back so that they can tell us, okay, they pitched a Hot Docs, but now what's going on? Like, what do they do after to make them successful? Maybe they have a film that played a Hot Docs that year, so that's one that's always really fun to learn about. We also have one called Doc Summit. So that's a session which is in like a town hall style, where we talk about the Canadian industry, documentary industry, and what's happening. Next, we have, thank you. Next, we have Kickstart sessions. So as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, this is like if you're an emerging filmmaker, come for like a day of an event of learning. So some of the sessions we have, and it's tailored towards emerging filmmakers and sometimes mid as well, is like my first doc. How do you make your first doc exactly if you've never done one before? Diagnosing your doc career, depending on what session or what stage of a career you're currently in. And all you need is that Kickstarter pass. And it's not very expensive, so this is like a good way in. But it's good to know that the Kickstarter pass, you don't really necessarily have access to everything else. You can't necessarily go to the parties or go to the other conference sessions, but it's a good way to get into our festival just to see what it's all about, and you have access to our industry center for the day. Next is workshops. We have a lot of really wonderful workshops that you do have to sign up for ahead of time in our online community that Neil mentioned earlier. So last year we had this great one called Art of the Interview. So we invited some producers from one of my favorite shows called This American Life. And they came in to talk about the art of interviewing. So I think that would be very helpful to anyone looking to interview. There was also a 2.5-hour session on branded docs, decoding contracts, marketing, privacy and security, lots of really interesting things. And so if you're planning to go to these workshops, my advice is to sign up for this like at least 2 weeks ahead of time in the online community, because it's really popular and you don't want to miss out. And you'll need to have at least a conference pass for that. So that's kind of
And just a quick note on the workshops and how they're different than sessions. They're typically at least 2 hours long, sometimes 3 hours long. It's a dig deep, in depth, and a smaller group. So we kind of cap it off at 30 people. And it's a huge and fantastic investment in learning and at a really reasonable access point in terms all you need is conference pass. And you can really go deep into some of these different subject matters. And all this will be posted when we announce the conference programming in a little bit. But I wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you. So next is I want to talk to you about the fund. So this is not necessarily tied specifically during our festival, but this is something that we run year-round at Hot Docs. So one that I'll quickly talk about, but won't spend a lot of time talking about, is the Hot Docs Blue Ice Group Fund. So this is a fund for filmmakers living and working on the continent of Africa, and you all live in Canada. So it doesn't, you may not qualify for that today. We have two other funds that I want to talk to you quickly about, which is the Hot Docs Ted Rogers Fund. So this is our Canadian fund, and we don't have a deadline. You can apply anytime your project is ready. And we're looking for projects in production. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Yes, did you? Oh, okay. So this is a fund that just opened up last year. We're looking for Canadian production, so that means that your company is incorporated in Canada and that your team is Canadian according to CRTC rules. And we're not looking for any particular themes or genres. We just are looking for great Canadian documentaries that are at least TV hour long to a feature film. So the next one I want to talk to you about is the Cross Currents Doc Fund. This is really exciting because last year we also announced a new stream to this fund, which is the theatrical stream. So imagine that this particular fund has two streams. It has theatrical, which is feature length, as well as shorts and interactive and experimental. And they both have different deadlines. But essentially what we're looking for this fund are films told within underrepresented communities. We're looking for emerging filmmakers to tell these stories. And they both come with a fellowship to Hot Docs, which means that we bring you over to Hot Docs, we put you through some of the labs that Stephanie runs at Hot Docs, and we put you through the festival, and you get to meet a lot of great documentary community. There's two deadlines for this, as I mentioned, and both will be announced in the next few weeks. And I hope you all apply for it, if you qualify. Okay.
So as Heidi mentioned, I'm Stephanie MacArthur. I'm the Industry Programs Manager at Hot Docs, and I did not introduce myself when I talked before, so there you go, that's who I am. One of the labs that I run that takes place during the festival is our documentary channel Doc Accelerator program. So I'm going to tell you just really briefly about that one. We've actually already closed the deadline for that for this year. We'll actually be notifying people really soon about who's been accepted into that program. But it's great to know if anyone wants to come and take part in one of our labs just to get a sense of what they're like for future years. So for this program, we have it open to emerging filmmakers from across Canada. We bring them into the festival and put them up while they're here if they're from outside of Toronto. And we do a 2-day private intensive lab on opening weekend. So that's when that small group has a bunch of really amazing industry professionals come in to talk to them. We talk about story and editing. We talk about budgets and finance and pitching and all sorts of things to really get people set up and moving forward on their career. And then they stay for the 5 days of the industry conference, and they have all access passes to the festival, which means they get to come to the forum and see that pitching. They get to go to some of the highlights of our industry conference, and they get to go see films and to network and meet as many people as possible. So they're really great labs and an amazing opportunity for anyone who's trying to just make that transition into the industry and into the next step or level of their career. Yeah, you have a question? Yeah, so the question was for next year, what qualifications or what do you need to have to apply for that? So first of all, we do the application process around December, January every year. So that's the time to kind of keep an eye out on our website for those applications being open. For this particular program, we're looking for people who are really kind of at a launching stage in their career. So we want you to have some kind of educational background, whether that's a post-secondary degree in a film studies program, or whether you've been out taking workshops or being part of labs other places, but that you've done some stuff to kind of move your career forward on your own. And then most people who are entering the program at this stage are at the stage where maybe they're working on their first feature, or they've got a short or two under their belt, and they really just need that little bit more to push themselves forward. And then we have an application process that people fill out, talking about what their goals are for the program, what they've done, what they want to do, and we ask for a couple of references from people that you've worked with in the industry. And that's about it. So it's a pretty easy process. The other thing I would say is for anyone who's disappointed that they missed this particular application this year, do keep an eye out. We'll have a couple more programs opening up before the festival starts in the next couple of weeks. I can't talk really about either of them yet because we're still doing some final signing on those programs with the associated sponsors, but there are 2 more programs coming up that will be really great for emerging Canadian filmmakers. So please keep a solid eye on our website and on our e-bulletins. And if you want to sign up for the e-bulletin, you can do that by just going to our website. And then the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is how to make the most of your meetings at Hot Docs. And I'm actually going to pull it back just a little bit first and say how to make the most of your time at Hot Docs, because I think that they kind of go hand in hand. So if you do decide to purchase an industry pass, whether it's the Kickstarter pass or something all the way up to our all access pass, it's an investment on your end. It's an investment of both time and money, and I think it's really important to help you guys make the most out of your time there. So the first thing I would say is, make a plan. Do your research, find out what are the events that are happening at Hot Docs, what access does your pass get you into, who are the people that are coming. As Neil mentioned, we have our online community. So if you've got an industry pass, you can log in and see who's coming. And really think about what are my goals for the festival? Who do I want to meet? What do I want to learn? Where do I want to go? A lot of people don't do that until they arrive at the festival. They show up, they get their delegate bag, and they're looking at what's happening for the first time. And you can miss a lot of great opportunities when you do that, because you can miss signing up for great workshops that require advanced sign up, or you could miss being part of Distribution Rendezvous or part of Dealmaker if you have a project that's appropriate for them, if you don't do that legwork ahead of time. So I think you've all done the great first step by being here today, but just keep at that work and make sure that you have a plan going forward. So just a couple quick things. Obviously, research is really important. If you want to meet with people, you want to pitch, you should know who they are, know what their mandate is, what their company is, what they do, how they're associated with it, and know why you're meeting them. So if you have a project, understand why your project might be right for them. One of the worst things you can do, especially if you're new and you're meeting people for the first time, is to waste their time. So it's really great. It's great to meet people, and it's great to just casually, walk up to them and introduce yourself and chat to them for a few minutes. But if you want to book a sit-down pitch meeting with them, you should really know that it's going to be worthwhile for them to sit down and do that with you. Because for some people, you might only get that one shot with them. And if you're completely off base and you're nowhere close to what they're looking for, then that's not necessarily great. And one of the things Madeline does is a really great job of collecting mandates from a lot of the decision makers that come to the festival. And those are available for you to look at on the online community, or if you're part of Dealmaker or Distribution Rendezvous, you can see who those people are and what their mandates are and what they're looking for, which is really great. And then the next thing I would say that's really important in terms of those meetings is to not forget that on the other side of those meetings, there's the follow-up. So it's great to walk out of a meeting, at the end of a meeting, to walk out with next steps. So whether it's, you're saying back to the person, okay, hear what you're saying, here are the 3 questions you have. I'm going to go away and I'm going to come back to you with answers. I'm going to come back to you with answers about this character. I'm going to come back to you with answers about this story structure, and tell them that you're going to follow up with them. I'm going to follow up with you next week when you're back in the office, and then follow through on that, because I think it's really important to keep that momentum going, but also to identify next steps to try and move the conversation forward. Because if the email is just, so what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Every time, you're not going to get anywhere. So if you can pull out from them what their concerns or their questions are and move forward with resolutions to that, that helps keep that conversation moving forward. And then where do you meet these people? So there's lots of great opportunities at Hot Docs to meet people. The first thing I'll say is if you have the Kickstart or industry conference pass, those passes won't get you access to some of these social events I'm going to talk to in a minute. So you're going to have to go about it in a slightly different way, but there's still great places to meet people. One of them is in our delegate lounge. So we have a delegate lounge in our industry center. We also have a networking tent just outside, and during the day that's open to take meetings and to meet people in there. So those are two really great places to just go and hang out, to book your meetings, to go and run into people. If it's sunny out, there's a lot of people that just hang out on the benches in the sunshine outside in the courtyard outside our industry center. That's another great place to just meet people. And then if you have the conference pass and you have access to films with that, you can also meet people in lineups. So just keep an eye out for other people wearing those industry passes and strike up conversations with them. Find out why they're here, what they're doing, what they're interested in, what they've seen, they've liked. It's a really great way to meet some people, even if you don't have access to the social events. But then with our networking conference and our all access pass, you have access to our social events. So those are, again, great places to meet people. The highlight there is always our happy hour. We do daily happy hours from the Sunday to the Thursday that overlap with our industry conference. And they're from 5:30 to 7 o'clock every day. And that's really the one place where I would say every aspect of our industry at the festival comes to the same event. So that's where you'll see guest filmmakers who are in with films that are screening at the festival. That's where you'll see people who are in to pitch for Dealmaker or for the forum. That's when you'll see buyers. That's when you'll see the people who are here from the labs. So those are really great opportunities to meet people. And then we also have different evening, late night social events. So if you're more of a dancer than a talker, then that might be the place for you to go and meet those people. Or if you're unlike me, you can stay up past 11 o'clock at night. That's another great place for you to go and meet people. I'll be asleep by then because I'm old now. And then finally, tickets. So if you do have one of those passes that gets you access to screenings, again, that's everything but the Kickstart pass. It's really easy. All you have to do is on the day of the screening, you go to the venue where the film is showing, you go to the box office at that venue, you show them your industry pass, and they will give you a ticket from the industry allotment. So if a film is marked as rush for the public, that doesn't necessarily mean it's rush for industry, because we hold back an allotment of tickets. So we've got some really brilliant people behind the scenes who do, I don't know, some kind of magical math, and they always seem to know very well the number of tickets to hold back for industry, what the demand's going to be like. So if you show up at least 15 minutes before the screening time with your pass, you've got a 95% chance of there being a ticket there waiting for you. So it's really easy as an industry person to kind of see films on the fly as well, so that you can be a bit flexible in terms of taking those amazing meetings when the opportunity comes. And then I think I'm passing it over to Aisha.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Aisha. I'm one of the Canadian programmers, and I wanted to give you a bit of the lay of the land from a programmer and filmmaker perspective. And I wanted to start with programming and tell you a little bit about the numbers. So this year we had over 3,000 submissions for Hot Docs, and in the Canadian section, which I program for, there's 3 of us, and we had a record number of over 450 submissions, and that's shorts, mediums, and features. And for this year's edition, we're trying to sort of put together a program of about 220 films, and about 25% of that will be Canadian. That means about 50 films of shorts, mediums, and features will be Canadian films. So what is it that we look for? It's usually a mix of things, but one of the things we definitely have an eye out for is storytelling. We want to see some new approaches. We want to see some different approaches. We look for variety. We definitely want to see a variety of subjects. And we try to keep audiences in mind. So general audiences, niche audiences. So we really go from the experimental to the conventional. So it's a definite mix. We also look out for filmmakers whose films we've seen in the past, just so we can track their career. And also there's lots of audiences and fans of theirs that want to see the next film. When it comes to networking, which is not the films, I wanted to talk about networking, because networking is a really important part of the festival for filmmakers. And I have a couple of pieces of advice to give. One would be, please make sure that you go to the industry sections. But for me, as a programmer and a filmmaker, I think the more important parts are actually the happy hours and the parties. That's where a lot of stuff happens. So go to the industry panels and learn, but if you want to meet people and catch them when they're actually open to you, I would say it's the happy hour and the party. One of the things you can do is make sure that you bring a card or postcard of the film that you either have at the festival or that you're working on. Put a nice strong image on the front. You can also put your trailer with the website and the password on the back. I wouldn't leave those out in the open. You might want to give those to specific people, or if you want everyone to see your trailer, leave them out in the open. But it's definitely a really good thing to do, is to show up at the festival prepared to talk about your project. And I know it's a cliche, but know your pitch and be able to do your pitch really concisely. One of the things I can't stand is when people go on and on. So you need to be able to say it precisely, and you need to tell me what's interesting about your film. So that's definitely something you want to do before you arrive at the festival. Let me just check if I covered most. Oh, and I do know that the industry is super exciting. You've heard about everything that they offer, but you are at a film festival, so please do see films. And from a filmmaker perspective, I would say go see films on subjects that you're working on, so you can actually see how other people do it. So if you're making a family portrait, go see the family portraits in the festival and see how people approach that subject matter stylistically, content-wise. I would also go see things in a range of storytelling modes. So nothing is more inspiring than seeing someone tell a story in a way that you didn't think of. And I also find in the past for myself, it's been really useful to see films and then email filmmakers. I've done that a few times. And once it was these two people who had made a film about Afghanistan, and I wanted to shoot in Afghanistan, and I wrote to them, and they responded 4 months later. But they did give me a lot of helpful hints, and they gave me the name of their fixer. So those things also happen outside of industry, so you gotta see films. And my last one is approaching programmers. There are 3 of us in the Canadian section, and I actually think Miriam Zaidi is here. Miriam, you can wave. She's in the back. So there's 3 of us, Alex Rogalski, Miriam Zaidi, and myself, and we are always happy and willing to meet filmmakers and to hear about the projects you're working on. One of the things that we have to do at the festival is to host filmmakers. So try not to capitalize on programmers' time, but make sure you introduce yourself. I really do want to hear about what it is you're working on. If you have a project coming up in the next year or 2, the good thing about the programming team in the Canadian section is that we watch every film twice. So over 450 films means that they all get watched. So I just come out of having watched almost 400 films. So please do introduce yourself. We often do remember that we've met the filmmaker at the festival the year before. And I think that's it, but if you have any questions, we do have a Q&A session.
We're going to move to the Q&A just in a minute, and we're wrapping up the presentation portion, but I just wanted to touch on some of our great publications and knowledge capture. So if you go to the publications page of the website, if you're looking for more resources that will help you in preparation for the festival, look at our publications. We did a great guide to co-production last year. This year we're working on a guide to budgeting. We have a pitching tool. We also have knowledge capture, which is highlighting the conference programming from the last several years, which is on our Vimeo page. And we also have a great blog called Hot Docs Jots, which highlights interviews with filmmakers. It highlights portions of our pitching tools. There's great Q&As with people who are professionals in the film industry who aren't necessarily directors or producers. We publish content bi-weekly, and there's a lot of great information on there, as well as a lot of great information that will prep you for future festivals. So check that out. And we're going to go to questions, and I'm just going to pass a mic down to Fiona. And if you have any questions, raise your hand and she'll give you the mic, because we're capturing for the international live stream. So just raise your hand if you have any questions at all.
Sure. Thank you for the presentation, by the way. First off, my question is really about the forum. The selection that you make for the forum, is it any particular way? I mean, how do you make the selection for the forum? I mean, there's 19. And secondly, is there any way to see past selections or see a list of what was selected in past years?
Great questions. So in terms of the latter question about past year selections, they're on the website, the list of the projects and the companies and countries. Also, you could just sometimes look to our festival. Many of the films that are pitched in the forum get made, and they end up here, which is pretty awesome. The selection process works like this, and it's similar to our fund selection process as well. So there's a robust application process where we often ask for like budgeting information, deep treatments and synopses of the projects, as well as bios of all the creative, and typically, of course, a section of footage. There's a rough cut section and a production section. So you could have a project that doesn't meet the minimum budgetary threshold, but is a rough cut. It's nearly done. And we accept a number of those. So of those 178 projects that are submitted, they're read by members of our team, as well as an international selection committee. And that committee is made up of broadcasters, distributors, and other industry experts, a handful of them. They evaluate all of the projects, they're graded, and then there is a fairly long and robust conversation about those. So we categorize the grading on a schema, and we select from the top choices, essentially. It's a challenge to pick 19, you're completely right, out of 178. But every year it's an incredible process to see the projects that come up in that grading section, as well as in the conversation that we have with the selection committee. And that's fairly similar to how our funds are selected as well. There's always an international selection, or not always international, but there always is an industry-led selection committee, as well as a vote from the Hot Docs team. But good question. Follow up.
Supplemental to that, I mean,
Sure.
I know you use, different characteristics in the sense of what you use to select, and I just wondered if you could tell us and the international community, I mean, what seems to bubble up those selections that hit the 19? Because we all hear it's great, it's an in-depth process, and we know that, and it's a
Yeah, so
challenge.
what brings it up? Totally. First, we're looking for eligibility at its baseline, right? Do they have the budgetary requirements? Like you're looking for at least 15 to 20% of the budget for the production aspect of it, and do they meet the other elements? Do they have a market partner attached, distributor, broadcaster, etc.? So that's for the production side of the forum. For the rough cut, you don't need to have obviously a budget threshold, but you do need to have a rough cut attached, and we watch them all. So that's part of it. When it comes to projects like why do these ones come up to the top? Many of them, and it's probably more critical now than ever before, are speaking to issues in our current zeitgeist. So, and bringing unique and exceptional looks to these stories, whether it be issues about Syria, whether it be about different issues around political rights or movements or etc., or stories that are untold. The films that are selected have critical and unique access to these stories that we haven't seen in the past. Additionally, they're taking a creative expression to these types of stories. So whether they be with strong cinematic language, or an avenue in through a certain voice that we would have never thought, would have brought you into a type of story. There's just different and unique ways, and also ones that we know really get down to it. Stephanie was talking before, that human essence of storytelling, where it's not always just cut and dry for your typical X audience or Z audience, but that can really transcend borders and transcend certain storylines where you didn't think that this little project from Korea would actually speak to every single person in this room. It's like a very fine magic that we're trying to identify, and it's a challenge to do off a treatment and footage. Yeah, and market viability, great point. We also know that these projects have to find money and pitch to the table, so we're very aware about who's in attendance. Right, so who's sitting at the table? These broadcasters who are often public broadcasters, but also commercial ones that come from around the world. So your PBSs, your NHKs, as I mentioned before, Arte, and Canal Plus, etc. But also folks like Amazon Prime, Netflix, they're sitting in the room listening. We're also very aware of who else is in the audience, not at the table, but programmers from other festivals, as well as sales agents and distributors. So we're mindful of that aspect as well. But when you're looking to see what is that story that is going to, dare I say, cream rises to the top, but exactly those are the elements that we're looking for.
We have time for one more question during this portion, and then of course you can ask more questions during our interview, and
Or you
also
could-
corner us in the lobby. But one more question for now, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. Or tweet us questions.
I happen to have a question.
Go ahead.
It's about the Ted Rogers Fund. You want something that's in production,
Mhm.
but if you're in production, don't you have the money? I guess what I'm saying is, what can you just expand on what the purpose of the fund is and what you're looking to fund and what you're looking for in a project that you want to fund? Because I have
Okay.
something in production and I'm curious.
Yeah, okay, so there's a bunch of questions there. I'll do my best to kind of put it all together. So what does in production mean? You don't necessarily have to actually be shooting right away. So I don't know if you guys are aware, we used to have a fund called the Chorus Hot Dogs Fund, which was previously called Shaw Media Hot Dogs Fund. So those funds, we were funding development and completion. But this particular fund is for production. So we're looking for people like when you have a market partner on board already, and that's when you can start applying. You don't have to necessarily start shooting right away. And a lot of the things that we're looking for for the films that we select are sort of almost identical to what Elizabeth just said. So the application is actually very similar. I would say we might even ask for a little bit more information. So if you already have a market partner on board, we want to see that agreement. We want to see that, like we want to see proof that that's actually, that what you're saying is the truth. So what else? We fund between 3 to 4 projects every year for up to $35,000. And one of the reasons why we decided not to have a deadline is because we want people to apply when they're actually ready. So yeah, as soon as you have a market partner on board, definitely apply right away. But we also recommend for you to send us some footage. It doesn't have to be like a full out sizzler, but just so we can have, exactly, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for joining us for the presentation portion. Thanks to the industry team and to Aisha in programming. We're gonna do a quick 2-minute changeover. Ed Barreveld is gonna join us on the stage. We're gonna do a short and sweet little Q&A, get into a little bit more depth in terms of someone who's pitched at the festival, someone who can give you advice on pitching and approaching decision makers. So we'll be back in 2 minutes. Thank you.
you. Hello again. So we're going to do a really quick conversation with Ed Barreveld, who is local producer and a great friend of the festival. Ed's had a lot of experience with hot docs in a lot of different ways. Last year, he pitched his film Dolphin Man at the Hot Docs Forum. He also produced the opening night film at last year's Hot Docs, the League of Exotic Dancers. And he also won the Don Haig Award last year, which recognizes veteran producers, Canadian producers who also do a lot of mentorship. So we're really happy to have Ed here with us. Before we bring him up, we're going to watch the trailer to Dolphin Man, which is the project that he pitched at the forum last year. So.
It's a complete contact, an intimate contact with the sea. John brought people into that environment in a more pure way, just to be informed of the ocean. Have you ever been afraid of death during your dive? Well, first you have to understand what death is about, to not be afraid of death. Questo mi ha permesso di, per la prima volta, di vedermi da fuori, scendendo. You really do have a big problem up there in the oceans, and well, opened my eyes to the greater aspects of what we take and what we give back. We own it all the time, all the time. See, it takes so much strength to see how insignificant we are. And every form they found, all the freedom.
All right, so thank you, Ed, for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Stephanie. And hello, everybody.
So when you pitched Dolphin Man last year, you were in early production and about 60% financed.
Yeah, we have been. It's a 3D co-production. So I'm the Canadian producer, and I'm co-producing with Greece and France. I'm the minority producer, and the Greek producer had managed to get an advance from the lead broadcaster, which is Arte France, that allowed them to shoot. But we were still looking for quite a bit of money at that time.
And you pitched at the forum a couple of times. How
I
many
have,
times you
yeah.
pitched now?
Yeah.
Do you
No.
know? Okay.
Sorry.
A number
Yeah,
of
a number of
times.
times.
So can you talk maybe a little bit about what you do to prepare to pitch a project and maybe how that pitch at something like the forum that preparation is different than when you're preparing for those one-on-one pitch meetings?
Sure. So the forum was explained early. You get a time slot of about 50 minutes to pitch to the table, 7 minutes for the actual pitch, and then there's 8 minutes for Q&A. So in order to prepare for a pitch like that, we treat it like we're putting on a show. You have to really treat it like a show. And we write a script. Often, well, more often than not, we have a trailer. I think actually it's very essential that when you present something at the forum that you have visual material available. Often what we do is we will practice our pitch on friends and family. And we're fortunate that we have relationships with broadcasters here in town. So sometimes I will ask a broadcaster to give us feedback. And typically that's a broadcaster that I'm not going to be pitching to, so that they don't feel stressed about, if I'm trying to pitch them secretly kind of thing. And then I always say, give us your worst questions so that we're prepared when we go into the forum. And we will tweak our pitch based on the feedback that we get. When I sort of go to the forum and I do what I call stalking, which is basically means that I try to sort of get people as they're on the floor, you don't have the luxury of that time. So basically, I do what's called the elevator pitch, which is a really short pitch where I try to sort of convey the essence of the film that we're trying to produce.
How do you know when a project is ready to bring it out to pitching meetings like this?
It's a good question. I would say that typically a project is ready to be pitched when we've gone through a fairly exhaustive process of development. And that typically, as I mentioned, includes having visual material available. I always say a picture tells 1,000 words, and I could, talk a broadcaster's ears off, but really the visual material usually speaks for itself.
When you're putting together that trailer to show, what are the key things that you're thinking about when you're working with your team to put together that sizzle or that trailer?
It has to convey the general theme of the film. You don't want to give away the story. The trailer has to be built in such a way that there are questions. If you sort of look at this trailer that we just showed here, we hope that you wonder, okay, what's the film about? Who's this guy really? Those are sort of the main elements, I would say.
So when you pitched this, you pitched alongside, so it wasn't just Ed out there by himself. You pitched alongside the director, Lafertis Charitos. You pitched alongside Murray Battle from Knowledge Network, who is on board as one of your market partners. And you pitched with Madeline Avramousis. I've said her name.
Avramousis, yeah.
From Arte.
Yeah.
So can you maybe just talk a little bit about, for the big pitch, the public forum pitch, what those different elements are, the different parts of the team, what they're bringing to their aspect of the pitch, and then tell us a little bit about this specific pitch and what the experience was.
This particular one was interesting because I actually had never met the director of the film before. I had met the Greek producer many years ago. In fact, we collaborated on a film in 2006, and out of that relationship sort of came a chat that we had at ITVA, which is the equivalent of hot dogs in Amsterdam, a few years ago. And they asked me if I wanted to collaborate on this film, but I had never met the director before. Of course, I knew the Canadian broadcaster because we've worked with Knowledge and Murray several times. I actually had never met the Madeline, sorry guys, there's tweeting going on here, and just gonna shut this down here. Let's get off this buzzing. Be good now. So I'd never met Madeline before, and I'd heard a lot about her, and she was a major financial contributor to the film. So I knew that we had to sort of make a really good impression because we were still not financed. There was a lot of tension about who the team was and how it was all coming together. The director came in town a few days prior, and we had been communicating about the trailer. The trailer that you saw, actually, we went back and forth about 6, 7 times trying to sort of make different changes so that it would work. And we spent the time, the director Lefteris Charitas, and I spent a couple of days together just working on the pitch because we had written something up before, but we had to practice that. And then we presented that pitch to Madeline and Murray, and they sort of gave us very valuable feedback. We sort of tweaked the pitch to what it finally became. And having the feedback from the two broadcasters that were involved in the project was particularly useful because they already knew a lot about what the film was going to be like, what we were trying to do. And we sort of honed our pitch that way.
Great. And you've worked with a fair number of emerging directors in your career. What, for people in the audience who maybe are coming as an industry delegate for the first time, they've got projects, what kind of advice do you give to your emerging filmmakers that you're working with when they're
In the
going
context
out?
of the forum?
Yeah, or just even pitching, trying to get those meetings and having those more casual pitch meetings.
Yeah, well, it's certainly in terms of getting ready for the forum, if you have a project and you've signed up for the passes, I don't know if all the passes give access to the mailing list, the delegates list, but I always say go to the delegates list and sort of pick your targets. And then once you've picked your targets, do a little bit of homework, see what they've commissioned in the last couple of years, and see if that is sort of like in line what you're trying to pitch. If it's not, then really don't bother because these people are highly sought after at the festival, and you're wasting your time and you're wasting their time. So go through the program and target your commissioning editors. I start to write them, and just to put this in context, I've been doing this for a long time now. So I start to write them literally like about a month before the festival starts. And I would say that 99.9% of the commissioning editors never respond. So then I get on the phone and I call them. And that's sometimes a pain as well because a lot of them are overseas. So that means either early phone calls or if you're dealing with Japan, late phone calls. And even then, you don't always get your phone call returned. And in fact, a lot of the European commissioning editors I find don't have voicemail. So you're just calling and calling and calling. But that pays off because I always say I don't need a lot of meetings when I go to the farm. I just want a couple of good meetings. That's, I think, a really important kind of thing is like quality over quantity for sure. So I usually try to set up a number of meetings ahead of time, and I usually get maybe 3 or 4 or 5 meetings that are set up ahead of time. A lot of people will say just grab me when you're at the forum. So I then spend time on coffee breaks and lunch breaks trying to chase these people down and try to get them, sort of towards the end of the day. I think one word of advice is don't harass people because they'll hate you for it. And this might sound kind of silly, but never pitch them in the bathroom because that has happened as well. And sort of try to gauge what their attention span is because, I find the best time to get people is earlier on in the day. They're sitting around the forum, they're listening to like all these projects and they have people sort of coming at them. So there is a certain fatigue that sets in towards the end of the day. So you want to try to get them sort of earlier. I always tell people, try never to pitch at a party because by that time people are sort of off the clock and you're much better sort of trying to have a social conversation so they get to know you a little bit. And if, through happenstance, it happens that they ask you what are you working on, that's your sort of window to then pitch your project. There's a very fine line that you have to thread between sort of being assertive and aggressive. You really don't want to tick people off. These are people that if you're going to stay in the industry, you're going to have a long-term relationship with. I've been working in film now for over 30 years, longer than that, I think. I've been going to international markets and hot dogs since inception here, actually, hot dogs. I used to be at the National Film Board of Canada, and I would participate in the early days. And then when I became a freelancer in the late 90s, I been going to hot dogs every year. So these are people, some of these people I've known for that long. And I think I've been able to establish a relationship with quite a few of these people over time by basically biding my time. You know, you may not speak to the commissioning editor that you want this year, but you may be at the next festival that you're at, or the next hot dogs that's coming around. So patience is a virtue. Um, and if you're too aggressive, people will just walk away from you. It doesn't really work. But you want to be assertive in that you want to make sure that they, if you do get their attention, that they pay attention to you. Another thing is that you should keep in mind is that when you're at the forum, you're there with 300 or so other filmmakers who are trying to do the very same thing that you're trying to do. So don't try to, take 20 minutes of somebody's time, because it's, first of all, disrespectful to your fellow filmmakers, but also, unless they're really interested in your project, you're probably boring them to death. So.
Actually, a lot of really great advice packed into that answer there, about, that fine line between chasing and being dogged and harassing people, and just understanding those lines and those boundaries. One of the things I think that makes it difficult, again, for filmmakers at any level, but especially emerging filmmakers, is that you'll have those meetings. Maybe you've been lucky enough, you followed the great advice, you booked that meeting with the person that you want to sit down with, and it feels like a positive meeting coming out, and they ask you for more, or they say maybe they're interested and they want to move forward, and then there's silence after the festival. How do you, as a producer, as a filmmaker, how do you first of all tell the difference between the genuine interest and the polite interest when you're having those kind of conversations, and how do you move those conversations forward when they're not responding to phone calls or emails after a great meeting?
For me, a lot of this is actually really gut feeling. So I kind of know when their eyes start to glaze over that I'm on the wrong track. But if they ask questions that are smart and interesting, that means that possibly they're very interested. Often I find that after the festival, when I do follow-ups, it's pretty much the same as when I try to set up meetings ahead of time. People don't return phone calls, they don't return emails. So it's the same kind of thing. You just have to really stay at it. You also have to consider who you're chasing. Are these broadcasters that are going to pay you like $50,000? Are they broadcasters that are going to give you $2,000? And then you kind of have to decide how much effort you want to spend into chasing the $2,000 down. I think one thing I wanted to mention is that also, if this is your first time at Hot Dogs at the forum, look at it as a learning experience. It's research. So, I very well remember that the very first festivals, it was very difficult to get access to broadcasters. So what I would do is I would just sit in the forum, and as projects were being presented, is listen to what the commissioning editors and agents had to say about the projects and how you could use that knowledge to apply to your own project. But yeah, follow-up is hard. You just have to be as dogged as trying to set up your meetings. You just have to stay at it.
Do you want to maybe give us an update on Dolphin Man?
Dolphin Man is currently editing. The Greek director is currently visiting Toronto. He's working at our office with our editor, Dave Gazala. We are very close to the rough cut stage. We actually have been raising money as we have been in production. I think we just actually only closed the full financing a couple of weeks ago when we got a Japanese broadcaster to come on board. This was a broadcaster that I met last year at Hot Dogs. And it was actually a broadcaster that my Greek producer had been talking to all along. Subsequently to Hot Dogs, I met them at Sunnyside and at IDFA. And it was really only in the last couple of weeks that the sort of deal came together. But there was a substantial amount of money that we raised, and it closed the financing.
Just to give people an idea, of where you are, and when you got a project like this that you're pitching, you don't just come to Hot Dogs, as you mentioned. You go to a number of events.
No, I go to a number of markets.
About how many markets do you go to?
Well, I only go to 3 markets in a year, that for sure, and then I may go to other markets if I feel there's a specific need for that. My markets basically are hot dogs, IDFA, and Sunny Side of the Dog. Um, Sunny Side of the Dog is a sort of interesting market because it's set up as a trade show. So it's not like hot dogs where you've got a pitch forum. They do have a small forum, pitch forum attached, but really the focus of that is all the broadcasters have booths, and for 3 days you basically circulate and try to set up meetings with broadcasters and agents. It's for me, it's kind of a natural. I'm Dutch originally, so for me, it's an opportunity to go back to see my family and do business at the same time. So it's a beautiful combination.
Great. So that's actually just about all the time that we have. But Ed, are you able to stick around for a little bit upstairs if people have
absolutely.
questions?
Yeah.
So we're going to have for those of you who are here in the theater, we're going to have a quick little social upstairs. So Ed's here as well as our industry team. If you have any questions about the festival or about anything else that we talked about today, so come on up for that. Also, for anyone who is here in the cinema who wants to come back for the screening at 6:30, we've got tickets for you guys for that, for Kedis Seda Torun, which is the one about the street cats in Istanbul, which I think was close to selling out on Friday night here. So a really popular film. People love those cats. So please grab your ticket for that and come on back outside. I don't know. I'm being mimed at. Oh, the talks, the social is downstairs, not upstairs. Don't go upstairs. No one will be there. And for those of you who joined us on the live stream, thank you very much. I hope it was informative, and I hope we see you all at Hot Docs. Thank you, and thank you, Ed.
Stephanie, good luck, everyone.